So yeah, without further ado then, let's get going. I'm just trying to make sure that yeah, there we go. Okay, so my name's Helen Attewell. I'm the coordinator for the Cumbria Sustainability Network and also a CAPS staff member. CAPS, for those people who haven't come across it, is the Cumbria Action for Sustainability, which is a long-standing Cumbrian charity which offers practical tools to help people achieve a greener lifestyle. And it's also a key organisation within the development of the Zero Carbon Cumbria Partnership. So that within that, the Cumbria Sustainability Network, as the name suggests, is an informal network of groups working in different communities across Cumbria on climate change and sustainability issues. So my role is to offer support to both established groups, but also to any new groups which are getting off the ground. So the Zero Carbon Cumbria Partnership has over 80 organisations which have already come together, including the local authorities, health authorities, Lake District National Park, the Local Enterprise Partnership, businesses, charities and community groups. So the whole drive of that partnership is to ensure that our carbon emissions in Cumbria are at net zero by 2037. That's quite ambitious. That's comparing to a national target of getting down to net zero by 2050. So the reason that I'm here today and we're offering some money is that CAPS and the partnership were successful in gaining £2.5 million worth of grant money over a 5-year period from the National Lottery Climate Action Fund. And from that fund, which partly funds my post and others within the local authority and CAPS, is to offer £100,000 of community climate grants money for new groups and existing groups as a way of encouraging initiatives on carbon reduction and awareness raising around climate change. And that's what we're going to focus on today. Okay, well, why do we need to take action on climate change? Well, obviously, we know it's crucial to step up and do what we can to reduce carbon, to live in a more sustainable way. We've already seen the impact of mad climate events like the Storm Desmond, Storm Arwen recently, the devastation that that's had on some of our communities. And so we need to do what we can to mitigate against those effects or prevent them happening in the first place. So you'll all know about the COP26 conference, which happened last year in Glasgow, where the whole world came together to make pledges on reducing carbon emissions with the hope of trying to reduce the impact of the climate crisis. Were some hopeful signs with that conference, but the consensus from both delegates and all those attending from community focus groups was that we need more urgent action if we're going to keep to that 1.5 degrees temperature rise, which we know is the kind of level at which things could be contained and won't necessarily be catastrophic. So the takeout for me was that we need to continue to put pressure on our leaders to take those hard decisions to cut carbon emissions and invest in green jobs, but we also need to work within our communities to reduce carbon in every part of our lives. You could argue that that work should have started long ago, but as we're starting to understand more about the potential impact of the climate crisis, it's becoming more and more evident that we need to take action at a community level, both at an individual level and with our families, friends, neighbours, to encourage them to make changes in their lives. So this new Climate Grants Fund offers groups in Cumbria a way of getting started and making a positive difference. Okay, so what's on offer? Well, as I described before, we've got £100,000 from the lottery over the next 4 years, and we're very grateful to Allerdale Borough Council, who also put in another £10,000 to the pot to increase the number of grants for groups in their area. So this money will be distributed in small grants between £200 and £750, medium grants £750 to £2,000, and a small number of larger grants. And I'll talk more about them later on, and will be awarded across the time period of going up till 2025. So the idea is to get most of that money out within the next 2 or 3 years, so that we can measure the impact of the work that's supporting and report this back to the National Lottery, but also so we can learn what's most effective, so we can encourage other groups to take that up and replicate anything that's successful in their areas. We're trying to keep the application and reporting process as light touch as possible, but we also do need to ensure that we're accountable for these public funds, and that we can use the learning as I described before. So there's inevitably some paperwork involved in monitoring and so on. So we aim to provide lots of information and support for organisations or partnerships which are starting up. And part of my role is to help with this development work, and also to signpost groups to link in with other infrastructure agencies and in the existing sustainability groups in the county who are very happy to offer support. We want to ensure a fast turnaround time for small and medium grants. People needing grants of up to £750 should learn within a matter of days if they've been successful, and medium grants within a few weeks. Yeah, and as I say, I'll be talking about the large grants a little later on. Okay, so who can apply and what types of project will be supported? I guess this is the key bit that people will be interested in. So to be eligible for funding, an applicant's project must be an eligible organisation. So that means not-for-profit and with objects or plans promoting environmental sustainability or carbon reduction. It must be based in Cumbria, and they must be locally controlled and delivering activities in Cumbria. They also must represent good value for money. By not-for-profit, we mean community groups which have been set up with a set of rules and a constitution. So you could be a group or a club, a voluntary or community organisation, a registered charity, a CIO, a charitable incorporated organisation, community interest company, a not-for-profit company, or a parish council or a community benefit society. So a whole range of groups are eligible, but it must be not-for-profit. We want to ensure that we support groups with a clear commitment to tackling climate change. So we'd like to see evidence that you have clear objectives or a project plan outlining how you plan to reduce carbon emissions. That's really crucial. If you don't have this, our advice would be to team up with an existing sustainability group and develop a partnership project with them. And that also would be eligible. Okay, so the types of things we would like to support are delivery projects. So in other words, practical projects, which are reducing carbon emissions. And that might be about food, where our food comes from, you know, the type of food, how much carbon's been used in producing, transporting and packaging it. Transport could be about car sharing schemes, or lobbying for better public transport, or installing electric vehicle chargers or whatever. Could be around energy and promoting use of solar power, alternative energy sources, maybe retrofitting projects, ways of ensuring that energy isn't wasted, and likewise waste and consumption, making sure that we're not wasting food, we're only buying what we need, and that we're able to repair and recycle as much as possible. The projects could also be about raising awareness, so making sure that people in your community do have a good understanding of climate change. Could be about organising awareness raising events and activities. Could be quite creative art exhibitions or film screenings. It could be climate reading groups. We've seen a number of those spring up recently. And we'd also like projects to link in with other work going on within the Zero Carbon Cumbria Partnership. For example, linking in with recommendations from one of the citizens' juries or people's panels on climate change, or linking in with our Youth Climate Action Programme. We're also going to be developing a Eat Local, Grow Local food programme, and we're supporting setting up repair cafes. So lots of activity already happening, and it'd be great if new initiatives could feed in and link in with some of that work. So as well as supporting projects that will have a direct impact in cutting carbon and encouraging more people to make changes to their lifestyles, we recognise it's really important to invest in those sustainability groups themselves to ensure that they're as effective as they possibly can be in taking action locally, lobbying politicians at a local and national level, and helping to make vital changes on policy. So we want to invest in existing groups as well as new and also new sustainability groups to develop skills and knowledge to help them have more impact, such as skilling up on responses to consultations, conducting surveys, gaining media and communication skills, setting up a website, organising online events, etc. And also around building groups' capacity, for example, by recruiting more volunteers or members so that that group can take on more activities and be more effective. We also want to link that in. There is some resource within the ZCC funded activities for events and training. So as well as individual groups developing their own training programs, you will be able to link in with ZCC training programs as well. So some examples then of what could be funded. Anything that's really community-based, engaging lots of residents and volunteers in that whole awareness raising process. So, you know, really about bringing in more energy, awareness, understanding at a very local level. Could be projects around food waste, perhaps linked into food banks as well, to tackling food poverty, making sure that you know, that food that can be dumped in landfill from supermarkets or other sources is actually going to a useful endpoint. Yeah, could be projects encouraging people to get out of cars, to walk, to use bicycles, use public transport and so on, and car sharing and EV charge points, as we said before. Could be projects around growing local food, encouraging behaviour change around diet and purchasing food, and encouraging people to eat more veg and locally grown veg at that. Could be projects involving young people in schools and youth clubs, linking in with local community groups. We were thrilled with the ideas that came forward last year in November by those children who engaged in our recent Youth Climate Summit. So fantastic ideas coming forward from young people who will be really at the forefront of this debate in coming years. And yeah, new groups mentioned, the climate reading groups are coming on, greening campaigns, the people's panels on climate change, and yeah, awareness raising events and so on. Yeah, so those are the kinds of things we would like to fund. Perhaps importantly, you also need to know what won't be funded. We haven't got huge amounts of money, and you also realise there's an awful lot of legal red tape involved in purchasing land or buildings or vehicles. So all of those are out of scope. However, other capital expenditure equipment, refurbishment, and so on would be in scope, but no land, buildings or vehicles. We're very sympathetic to the nature crisis and the need to promote biodiversity. However, that's not the focus of this fund. Emphasis here is on reducing carbon emissions. That's the kind of main thrust of the community climate grants. So it's about reducing carbon. We're not that keen on projects which are looking for money and think, oh, the community climate grants might be a good way of filling this, but don't have a genuine focus on tackling climate change. I did describe this before as kind of voluntary sector equivalent of greenwashing, a term you might have heard, where commercial companies are trying to say the right things to attract investment, but aren't genuinely committed to climate change. We really need people to demonstrate that climate change is a key driver for their current activities program of work. We also, and I guess this probably links to the whole value for money debate, is we don't want projects that are duplicating existing work. You know, if you know about a project and you can link in and collaborate, that's better than duplicating. Although I'd say it's fine if we obviously could fund a good idea in a different area. So if, you know, a repair cafe, for example, had been set up, proven to be successful in one area, fine to take that idea and try and promote it in another area, not fine to set up a repair cafe in the next street to the one that already exists. So I think there's a real benefit in learning about what works and applying that model elsewhere, tailoring it to the particular needs of your community. And as I mentioned before, the sustainability network made up of those existing sustainability groups is really keen to share their expertise and support people in other communities across Cumbria to help each other and gain new skills and get involved with this agenda. So there's, yeah, help out there. Anyway, on the things we won't fund, anything generating profits for private gain, and also anything that's already being purchased or delivered. We can't fund retrospectively, we can only fund new work. So those are all the things that we won't fund, but hopefully there's plenty of scope for things that we will fund. And yeah, just to mention that in addition to the priorities around cutting carbon emissions and strengthening local sustainability groups, there's some more things that we really want to focus on, linking in with the wider priorities of the Zero Carbon Cumbria Partnership around broadening engagement, deepening engagement. We also want to make sure that those people and communities who've been hardest hit by climate change, potentially those people perhaps on low incomes, maybe in drafty, unsuitable rented accommodation, can't afford to heat their homes properly or install insulation, older people who might be affected by extremes of heat or cold, or young people who will live through profound climate changes and biodiversity loss in their lifetime. All those groups, refugees, asylum seekers, people who are perhaps on the margins of our society, who haven't had the advantages that others have had, perhaps in being able to invest in climate change measures to reduce carbon. Those are the kinds of groups we really like to help. And groups setting up in areas that previously haven't had much of a chance to work on these types of issues. So again, focusing on areas which haven't previously had a sustainability group. Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning, one of the focuses of the webinar today is how to go about applying for a large grant. So we've got the easy access monies up to £2,000, but there's going to be a special process involved in applying for amounts of over £2,000 and up to £10,000. So I wanted to make sure that everybody is aware of that, so that they can start working on their applications now. We're planning to work with an organisation called Shared Futures, who are also helping the Zero Carbon Cumbria programme to develop the people's panels, the climate change panels. So they're experts on participatory democracy, a long word, but it basically means getting more people involved in making decisions and having their say. So we are trying to make the large grants process a bit more participatory, and with that in mind, we are going to have a process whereby after people have applied, their applications will be sifted by the steering group of the community climate grants, which in itself has got members of local sustainability groups as part of that steering group. And those applicants which best meet the criteria for the grants will be shortlisted. So two-stage process, deadline of 28th of February for the first round of the funding, applications sifted by the Community Climate Grant Steering Group. And then this is the crunch thing to note, is that shortlisted applicants will then be invited to attend a special meeting of the Cumbria Sustainability Network on Zoom on the 31st of March this year. So applicants be asked to provide a 5-minute presentation on their proposal, and also to be available to answer questions from meeting attendees. And then, this is the exciting bit, after the presentations, a vote will take place where everyone can vote. They'll have a series of votes so they can rank their priorities, but they will not be able to vote for their own project. So yeah, we're hoping that that will be quite a sort of fair and democratic way of making a decision, but also the other members of the meeting, the Cumbria Sustainability Network members, are interested in offering their support. So they'll be able to share knowledge about their existing work and offer any help they can to new groups setting up. So could be quite a creative way of making a decision, but yeah, I really encourage you to start thinking about that now. We will have future rounds for the funding. You know, again, it won't come up till beginning of next year after this date. So, you know, please do, if you've got a project that you're thinking about applying for this year, you need to get your skates on and look researching what you need to do to fill out that application form and get it in for the 28th of February. Yeah, as I said, we do want to focus on new groups. Very keen to fund new activity, but also recognizing that it might be a bit daunting, mustn't it? Mightn't it, starting from scratch, not knowing where to turn, not knowing how to get started. So I'd just really encourage you, if you're interested in getting a new group off the ground, there really is a lot of support out there to help you. We all need to start somewhere. And the important thing is that you really kind of record what's going on, keep reflecting and reviewing what's going on, and learn as you grow and develop as a group. So through the Sustainability Network, we have that facility for you to talk to other groups who may have applied for funding in the past, and they, you know, surely would be happy to share their experiences with you. So we have an awful lot of information on our website, so please do have a look at the frequently asked questions and the guidance documents, get some ideas, include some information on there on planning your project and constructing a budget. There's also a list of helpful organisations on the website, such as the Council for Voluntary Services and Action with Communities in Cumbria. And both those groups can offer support on getting started. So, you know, really important that you make use of the resource that's out there. Help's available from CAPS. For example, if you've never produced a PowerPoint before, we're looking at training and support both for individual groups, but as I mentioned before, through our events and training program, we're looking to provide the help you need. So please shout out if there's anything that you'd like us to support you with. Yeah, we're here to provide support. Shy Bairns getting out, just shout up and ask if you need help. Okay, so when it comes to actually making those applications, worth having a look at the application form and guidance notes, frequently asked questions, etc., before you start work on your application. Just want to really emphasize that, I mean, we've got it on the website, but you must download your electronic application forms before you start working on them. And then you save them to your computer, work on them, and then when you've finished your application, you just submit that by attaching your application and other documents to an email to communitygrants@caps.org.uk. So get in touch if you have any technology issues on that, because we know that can be challenging from the some. So yes, once you've had a look at the application form and those guidance notes, what you'll also need to have worked out is what your contact name and address is. You must have a constitution or a set of rules. So if you don't have that, get in touch. You need a bank account, bank details, and a recent bank statement. However, you could work in partnership with an established group if that's an issue, and use their bank account with their agreement as a holding fund for your monies. We need a plan for your project costs, budget with the budget. We need terms and conditions signed off. They're within the application form, but you must sign them before you submit them. Must make sure that you've got things like insurance in place, public liability insurance, safeguarding policies and procedures if you're working with children or vulnerable adults. And also, as I mentioned, if you're working in partnership with another group, we'd need some evidence that there's a formal relationship there. So a partnership agreement. Yeah, so hope that's clear. Do have a look at the website for more information. And then looking ahead, if you are successful in getting a grant, there's various conditions that you would have to comply with. So you need to think about this as well. We want to make sure that the community fund is given credit for their support. Maybe that will encourage them to give Cumbria more money in the future to spend on these kinds of programs. So we need you to keep records of your expenditure, so you have to keep all your receipts and so on. We need you to keep monitoring records, so records of the numbers of people attending events, numbers of volunteers recruited, and so on. Any press publicity you receive is really useful at telling the story of the success of your grant. If things aren't going as you plan, then really important that you let us know if you encounter any problems, and we might be able to help troubleshoot and support you with that. And yes, at the end of your grant, we'd need a final monitoring report, and you also signing up to take part in any evaluation activities that the wider ZCC partnership are undertaking. Okay, so as you can see, we're keen to provide as much support as possible to groups. Please don't hesitate to ask support if you need it. Can't provide you with the information you need. We'll try and ensure that we find help from another source. I think it's really great that we've got so many fantastic organisations around in Cumbria who can offer that expert advice. So hopefully we'll be able to signpost you in the right direction. So yeah, next steps. There's the address for the website. There's my personal email address or work email address if you need to contact me directly. As we said before, you need to download the application form and fill it in offline, complete with an electronic signature, sign up to the terms and conditions, etc., and then return to climategrants@cafs.org.uk. You must make sure you've got all those additional documents in there, otherwise we'll have to chase you, and of course that means that the kind of fast turnaround might be delayed. So do try and front load your application with as much detailed information and additional documents as you need to do. Okay, and then all you need to do once you've got the money is successfully deliver your project, and which hopefully will help tackle the climate crisis and achieve net zero by 2037. So yeah, that's a quick win, isn't it? No, I absolutely realise how much hard work is involved in making those applications and then delivering on those projects. But all I can say is, you know, it's an absolutely crucial piece of work to undertake. You know, the responsibility is on all of us to do what we can to tackle the climate crisis. So, you know, really, I'm so looking forward to those ideas coming forward and your applications, and we'll help you as much as we possibly can. Okay, well, I'm going to try stopping sharing and have a look and see what is coming forward in terms of the questions and queries that you might have. We've got maybe 20 minutes, I would say, to go through that. Okay, so this is a difficult question. If we have several small and medium projects, is it better to bundle them together or submit them separately, or a mixture of both? I'd say in answer to that question, one of the key things to decide is how are you going to sequence that work? Do you intend to do all these projects at the same time, or are some of them more time critical and urgent and need to be done straight away? If they're small urgent projects, I would say apply through the small or medium grants process. If they are larger projects, you know, if it makes sense to integrate the projects and submit one larger grant application, then I think that equally makes sense if they're interconnected and there is that you know, synergy and common sense, I guess, that they work well together as an application. So yeah, might be something that you'd want to follow up with myself to have a think through about how you're sequencing your activities, and making sure as well that you're not taking things on, taking on too much new work all at one go, because that really is a capacity issue, isn't it? Depends how confident and experienced your group members are in delivering projects. And yeah, you know, see if there's not much experience there, then that's going to be more risky the bigger the project is. So yeah, that's a difficult one to give a straight answer to, but yeah, certainly if it's something small and immediate, then bang in those small applications. If it's something that's more complex and is a holistic set of measures, then do provide us with one integrated large grant application. So next question is around why does parent organisation have to be based in Cumbria? Somebody's writing that their national organisation projects based in Cumbria and funded by Cumbria County Council. If you're a local branch of a national organisation, so you've got a local committee, and that local committee are making decisions about the spending and about the activities that are delivered in Cumbria, then that is totally eligible. What we wanted to do was fund grassroots activity, and therefore if all the money and the decisions are going through a parent organisation based in London or elsewhere, then that takes away from that grassroots engagement, which is a key strand of the project's intention, the funding's intentions. So yes, that's why the decision has been made to focus on locally grown, locally owned Cumbrian projects. But as I say, if you're a local branch of a national organisation and have your own committee, your own constitution, your own bank account, then that's absolutely fine. Can the funding go towards salaries? Yes, it can. Obviously, the amount of money means that would probably be around match funding with another funder potentially, or funding somebody on a very part-time basis. Something could be a day a week project potentially. Could be for consultants to come in and support your group. But yes, totally fine for money to go towards salaries. Next question. We're a sports club based in Penrith, undertaking matches throughout the north of England. Are we eligible? Yes, as a not-for-profit group, you are eligible. It's not about where those matches are taking place. It's about your activity around tackling climate change. So yeah, what we'd be looking for is not just the kind of carbon cutting measures that you might take in, I don't know, lighting or heating your clubhouse and your changing rooms, for example, but it's about the kind of the messaging that you're looking to undertake, perhaps encouraging your supporters to pick up on the zero carbon Cumbria agenda. It would be, I would hope, a matter of looking at your environmental policy in the round and thinking about how you can integrate other aspects of the work within that, and yeah, and look to use your position as a sort of, you know, a kind of, if you like, a leading organisation within the Penrith community that other groups and individuals will look up to, you know, using that leadership position to really champion and support climate change measures, because that really could be a really effective way, couldn't it, in getting that message across. How many people from each application can attend the shortlist? Is there a limit? Sorry, I probably didn't make that very clear. The shortlisting will be undertaken by the existing steering group panel of the community climate change grants. So we've got an existing panel that will do the shortlisting, but for the final event, where, you know, we're hoping to have, we'll have more applicants probably than the amount of money available to dish out. So it will be a competitive process, but it'll be a whittled down shortlist. We'll come to the final event. So yeah, it's perfectly fine to have multiple people attending that meeting, but everybody attending will be asked to declare if they've got an interest in a particular grant. And obviously, if they have an interest in a grant, they won't be able to vote for that particular grant. So for that particular application. So in that way, yeah, you can be making decisions about who else best meets the criteria for the fund, demonstrates best value for money, is going to have the biggest impact on climate change, but you can't then vote for your own project within that. So it's still a little bit work in progress. I mean, it is a kind of new way for us anyway of looking at who's allocated funding. So, you know, we'll be learning from this experience as well as we go along. But yeah, we'll be sending out more information about that final event on the 31st of March nearer the time. I'm just having another swig of water, my voice is going a little bit. Okay. Yeah, here we go. Can we apply for small, medium and large that all go towards the same project? For example, small for research, medium for materials, large for larger purchases needed. Well, I guess, you know, in some ways that that works, doesn't it? So I can see that you're stacking up the amounts from, you know, £10,000 maximum to sky's the limit maximum if you're adding up all these other projects together. However, what I would say is that the steering group is very minded to make sure that there's a fair allocation across Cumbria. So if there were lots and lots of projects, lots and lots of applications coming in from one particular area, then that would eventually go against you, because the steering committee would be saying, well, you know, it's all very well, we've got all these zillions of projects from I don't know, Copeland, for example, but we haven't got anything from anywhere else. I think that would then go against you. So I think it's a small pot of money. The idea of it is to really encourage that thinking, that planning, that, you know, that kind of inspiration to develop new work around tackling climate change. But our small pot of money cannot fund everything. So I think you would need to be looking at what other sources are out there, looking at match funding from other charitable trusts and so on, looking at whether you know, some local authorities have got their own pots of money towards climate change issues. It may well be new projects coming up in the future through the lottery or elsewhere, which are offering money around climate change, because I think what's very clear from the charitable sector is that there's a growing awareness of how crucial you know, this work is, and you know, I think there will be more resource coming for this work. We already know Lake District Foundation, for example, have got small grants around the you know, tackling carbon for groups. We've got, for example, Low Carbon Barrow have got a project currently where there's quite a lot of European funding available for businesses, individuals who are wanting to put money towards carbon saving schemes. That's available in Barrow. So, you know, there's other pots of money around. So I'd say, you know, yes, please come forward with your ideas, but do be mindful that you know, this community climate grant is not going to be able to fund all work for everybody on climate issues. So it is going to be a matter of mix and match with other sources of funding if you have a very big project that you want to undertake. Just thinking about that as well. I mean, if it is a very big project that you want to undertake, it might be more sensible to go to this pot for feasibility studies, research, that kind of thing, rather than a tiny amount of a very big capital sum. So yeah, just have a think about that, and yeah, feel free to get in touch if you want to talk that through with me. Can the grant be for 100% of the project, or must it have other funding sources booked before this grant period can be awarded? I mean, that really goes back to what we've just been saying about your whole funding strategy and your budget, working out what money you need, and then where those bits of money might come from. It really doesn't matter for our purposes whether the grant is 100% funded through ourselves, or whether there's other match funding involved in delivering the project. Obviously, if you haven't got other funding sources lined up already, then that will delay the allocation of funding, because that would be difficult, wouldn't it, if we gave our amount before you had assurances that the match funding was coming from elsewhere, because we need to have some evidence that the project is viable and can be delivered within the timescales. But that would be something that we could negotiate, I'm sure, as the, you know, if the funding is awarded in principle, it would be up to you to notify us when you've got the match and the project becomes viable. But yeah, it's not necessary to have that match in the first place. You know, it's very much dependent on your application and your your funding needs. So is the funding in advance or in arrears? Yes, it's most definitely in advance. You know, we want to help groups, and we're very well aware that some groups are starting from scratch. So yeah, and as the question points out, there may be cash flow issues for smaller groups that can't fund work upfront. So yeah, most definitely in advance, and hopefully it should be straightforward. Okay, sorry, I'm going to have another swig. My voice seems to be cracking up a bit. Okay, so yeah, for the large grants then, we will have a second or even third round of funding applications. And we think that at the moment, our proposal is to have one round this year, another round next year, depending on how much money is left over, a further round the year beyond. However, the other intention is that if we are able to pick up other money from elsewhere, perhaps more lottery money, if the program's a real success, then we'll be able to attract more money into the fund and can extend this further. But yeah, at the moment, we can say for definite that we'll have around this year, deadline 28th of February, and around next year, and then we'll cut our cloth accordingly beyond that. Okay, planning objections can be funded. Well, that's a really difficult one. Yeah, I think that's me being a little bit cavalier about thinking about things that can be chucked into the mix. But obviously that's something that many groups are very aware of. If there's planning proposals that seem to be completely counter to our objectives to gain our net zero status by 2037, then that's a really difficult one, isn't it, for local groups? And yeah, they have every right to get involved in campaigning and challenging and so on. So yeah, the example there is that action to gain public awareness of planned Whitehaven coal mine may well fall within this example, and yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, but in terms of detail, it's up to you to make the application. We're also looking at, I was saying before, the events and training program that could include training around how to construct objections to planning applications that seem to be counter to the zero carbon initiative. So yeah, it could be through a grant or it could be through the wider ZCC program. Would education facilities be eligible? For example, our sports team is based in a school building and needs better eco-friendly lighting. Yes, education facilities would be eligible. However, the application would have to come from the not-for-profit group rather than from the school itself. So if there's a sports group with its own constitution and ownership, or through the PTA, for example, yes, education facilities would be eligible for that. And yeah, it's a very new group. You probably wouldn't be able to provide bank statements. We absolutely recognise that. And we recognise that there will be a higher level of risk involved with groups that are unproven and haven't got a track record to build on. But as we said before, you've got to start somewhere. Probably wouldn't be appropriate to put in for, the kind of maximum amount of funding with no track record at all. I'd say generally the advice is start small and build up. So you're proving your credibility and demonstrating that you're able to work effectively. But yes, we absolutely recognise the problems with getting started, getting a bank account. If it's a very small amount of money and in one invoice, there's the possibility that CAFs would be able to directly pay that invoice for you. So again, if that's going to be a real challenge for you, then we'll look at ways of supporting best we can. So yeah, that's very, very garbled. Don't know whether there's anything else that anyone who wanted to bring up. Sorry, I'm just trying to find the chat. Okay, well, if we haven't got any more questions, we'll duck out. But yeah, thank you so much for attending today. You know, I hope you found it helpful. It has to say, it is hard work making applications, hard work delivering your project, but yeah, really, really worthwhile, I would say. So yeah, if we can offer any support or help, do let us know. And if you want more information about the Sustainability Network as well, we're very pleased to hear from you. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.